Welcome to The Third Story. I'm Leo Sidran. Today, I'm talking to Caleb Hawley. Let me tell you a little about what this is and how this happened. I was watching this Corey Wong video last year. Corey is from Minneapolis. He's a practitioner of the Minneapolis sound, bringing the funk back to the masses from the banks of the Mississippi. He's also a member of the band Wolfpack, which I've been talking about plenty here lately. But anyway, Corey posted this video called Limited World featuring a singer named Caleb Hawley. The track was super slamming, and there was this outrageous vocal on it. Crazy falsetto, totally nuts lyric, and in the video, this singer, this Caleb fellow, just had a vibe that I responded to. His hair, his clothes, his demeanor was funny, but dead serious at the same time.
Straight up to the gate, I don't wanna be late. Uber man, I gotta play the catch. Trying to make an escape, ain't it gonna be great when they read my name? Yeah. Time to show this little time what they've been missing. Should've never ever listened to the rhythm of the prison. They were never gonna have it my way. Get up, take a seat, listen up, turn around to the beat.
I Googled him. Here's what it says about him on his website. Caleb Hawley is a Harlem-based, Minneapolis-raised singer-songwriter and producer who has been shoveling Gobstoppers into his ears for the past decade, combining catchy melodies with dark and satirical lyrics. One has to be careful not to slip while dancing in a puddle of their own tears. I decided I needed to meet this guy. At that point, I hadn't heard very much. I saw a few YouTube videos online before I reached out to him, and there were some videos as duets that he did, like one with the great singer Joanna Teeters, another one with Wolfpack member Theo Katzman. But in truth, I hadn't really gotten all the way into Caleb's solo music when I reached out. I was just riding that sweet intuition, and I was not wrong to do it. One thing that I did discover about him was that he works out of an unusual space in Harlem. It's a storage facility. He doesn't work for the storage facility, but he rents a small locker, storage locker, the kind of place where you might keep old furniture or luggage or boxes of stuff that your parents made you take out of their house when they downsized. You know, that kind of place. Basically, if you have a bathtub or have ever been in a bathtub, picture a bathtub and imagine that you're standing in it and that all around you is musical gear. That's where he's been working. I suggested that when we meet, we do it in the storage locker to do the interview. And fortunately for me, he not only agreed, but had recently upgraded to Storage 2.0, a larger storage locker that accommodates a green screen and more space for him to make his videos as well as record music. So we were really able to stretch our legs and get into it. He did keep the small storage locker too, I guess for old time's sake. But anyway, now we've got 2 storage lockers and things are starting to expand for Caleb. Meanwhile, I got to work checking out his solo music, and it was a journey. His songs are so funky and so poppy and so produced and so danceable. His singing is so soulful, but the thing is that the lyrics are totally confessional. And I started to feel a real connection to the guy that only deepened my interest in talking to him. So we did this interview in the fall of last year, and it is finally seeing the light now. It's actually a bit of a happy accident because it turns out that this week he's releasing new music and new videos. So check out Caleb's new music, and you know where you can go to find those links. third-story.com. It's the website for this podcast. While you're there, sign up, subscribe, check out the previous episodes with all the Wolfpack members and Wolf extended family. And you can also check out this conversation I had with Peter Himmelman in the fall, who it turns out was a big influence on Caleb. And we talk about that in our conversation here. While you're at the Third Story website, third-story.com, you can also check out the Spotify playlist that I have curated for today's episode. It features songs by Caleb and also songs that we talk about and artists that we talk about in the conversation. There's also some videos and links to not only Caleb's stuff, but my socials. Don't forget, you can now follow the Third Story podcast on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, all of them at Third Story Pod. In the storage locker, Caleb actually recorded the conversation on his Pro Tools rig, and I'm keeping the plug-in settings that he used when he sent me the session. So today, for all you recording geeks, you might be interested to know that we're using the CLA Vocals plugin on our voices, set in exactly the way that Caleb had set it. Let's get into it, my conversation with Caleb Hawley in the storage locker in Harlem. Should we do this?
Let's do it.
Caleb Hawley. Thank you for welcoming me into your storage space number 2.
Yes, thanks for coming.
Man, there are so many ways I could start this out, but I guess my question is, what is a nice Midwestern guy like you doing in a Harlem storage space like this?
New York City is the place of dreams. Like I feel like a lot of people come out here for music, as that's what I did. 3 days after I got married to my wife from Wisconsin, 3 days later we moved out here, and I guess 13 years later we're still here. So that's just. I mean, New York has definitely changed me, and I often think about the different person I'd be if I would have stayed in the Midwest. I'd probably be a lot nicer in certain ways, and maybe have less stress, But yeah, I'm glad to be here.
Wikipedia tells me you were born in Milwaukee.
Yeah, I was. I only lived there for 6 weeks, but my dad is from Milwaukee. Grew up in Milwaukee, so I've always had ties to Cops, Frills, and Custard. I don't know. Yeah, I felt very much like a Wisconsinite for a long time. When I moved around a bit as a kid, after moved to Brooklyn Center, a suburb of Twin Cities, from Milwaukee, then to Fargo, then to Hudson, Wisconsin. So I don't know. I never know exactly where to say I'm from, but I kind of just say actually Minnesota, Wisconsin.
Why'd you move around so much?
I don't know. I think I'd have to ask my dad that, really. Like my parents, like they I think it started off like my dad was still in school, and then he got a job at the U of M, and then in NDSU in Fargo, and then decided that he wanted to work in a church, and my whole family background is like ministers and therapists, essentially. So
and so was your father a therapist or a minister?
He has been a therapist, and he has been a minister. He's always done both while working in education, essentially. Like right now he works at UW Stout, and in like the marriage and family therapy department. But he's So I think that like academia was always has been his favorite passion, but just different opportunities along the way that were presented to him.
And what church?
Different spots. Church of Christ would be is the background. So it's an a cappella church. So I feel like I got a lot in music through church growing up, but it wasn't the instrumental side of things. It's how I learned to sing and do harmony, I guess.
What are the songs like?
They're traditional hymns. Like that's what I grew up, singing, like "I'll Fly Away" or whatever. And obviously it's what I knew, and there'll, I guess, always be something nostalgic when I go back and hear, and if I'm back home or whatever, and I go to church with my parents and hear the a cappella, it's just, I mean, for me, it's nostalgic,
Indulge me because I don't know anything about this. In a cappella church, it's not all unison, right? People are finding harmony as they sing.
There's a lot of harmony. It's kind of amazing because it's like people that wouldn't even consider themselves musicians know how to sing like the third and fifth or whatever. Right. It's like it's just what we did. Because then later on in life, I would go to a different church and it would just be like there'd be music and everyone would be on this like unison note, and I'd be like, to me, I was like, I didn't think it was good because I was like, "Where's the harmony?"
Well, it's totally harmony ear training, right? I mean, you find harmony in every melody.
Yeah,
it's really deep. In a way, that's that's like solfege training. That's the way the European, like the Italians, really sing beautifully because I think they learn to sing in the same way.
Yeah,
they learn harmony by singing. It's really interesting.
There was a whole like a cappella scene in the denomination I grew up in. It's like. A cappella, I mean, honestly, creatively, one of my favorite groups I listened to growing up was a group that was literally named a cappella. And, it's interesting. It's it's weird because, it comes from a belief that instruments are wrong. You know? Yeah.
That's why it's a cappella.
Yeah.
What's wrong with instruments?
What's wrong with instruments? They weren't used in the New Testament. No, I can... I can laugh at this now, but
it's real. But it's very real.
Yeah, and it depends on where you are, and it's funny because when you come away from a church, and if you do later on in life, as I have, like it's you hear people say certain things, like you hear like I was listening. I mean, I'm a podcast junkie to be honest, and I was listening to this Malcolm Gladwell one, and. I heard him, he was talking about someone from the Church of Christ, and he referred to them as like like the fundamentalist of fundamental, you know? And I was like, whoa, like.
Did you not realize that when you
No,
were
of course not. I you know, and it's still actually kind of hard for me to hear because obviously a lot of my family is in the Church of Christ, and I know a lot of people who are great, totally great people, and I look at them as very smart and not closed off in any way. And there's but it's hard for me sometimes to put those two together. Like, how can you be so black and white on certain issues, but also be open and I have a great time hanging out with these people, and it's like it's definitely been some sort of collision for me to figure out.
Do you feel a certain conflict in that sense? I mean, what you're describing sounds really helpful to you in a lot of ways, and really informative and really fundamental in your development. And on the other hand, what it doesn't speak to is how funky you are, how soulful you are. You know what I mean? How multi-instrumentalist you are. All these other aspects of yourself. Like, has that been hard for you to square personally?
Yeah, I mean, that's why in the end, I no longer am in the faith or whatever, and I mean, I don't know if that's why necessarily, but like that's probably something to do with it. But also, like, there was this weird thing in growing up in life that like two things that kind of battled against each other, and that was that I'd go to this church that was very conservative, but then every summer we'd go to this folk festival, and actually, which is what we were just talking about a minute ago with where I would see Peter Himmelman play, who we just had on, and that was like a totally like liberal side of things, and I was getting. But I would say, there's a commonality in the two that I found interesting, which is like they're both, I think, based on like they're very like moral things. Like in folk music, it's always about like bettering us as a people and community, and churches comes from the same place. Yeah, and but two very different approaches, and so yeah.
So was there secular music at home though? Did your parents put on secular music?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean like. I grew up hearing a lot of, obviously just from going to these festivals, but then like, James Taylor was like a big one, like, that I'd hear a lot of, but also like a lot of random people that we would hear. Like, I didn't hear them as random. To me, they were stars. They're just these folk musicians that like, when I talk to people like peers my age, like I have a gap in front as far as like what was pop music, when I was growing up, because I was listening to like totally obscure folk artists, I mean, and some of them have like, like some people know them. Obviously they're out doing their thing. Like Martin Sexton was a big hero of mine who a lot of people know. Yep. Or, like I just said, Peter Himmelman was also, and then they would have like the big headliners at the festival. So like I got, one guy I got way into was Keb Mo, and he was really big, and then I remember at the age of 10 hearing watching this remember that movie Major League?
Yeah, sure.
And I remember the theme song, and I loved it, and later on found out when I was 15 that's Randy Newman, and so that
am I right? Is this, who's on your t-shirt?
This is Randy Newman on my shirt.
I Randy Newman L.A.
Yeah, Randy Newman. Yeah. He was a hero of mine for years, and really like the soulful side of things, I think I was just intrigued by, but like there was nothing like, I would say a big influence into that was I was playing like Nirvana and Metallica, and then I like I went to seventh grade, I got into jazz band or whatever, and I saw these weird ass chords like plus signs and circles and stuff, and I was lucky enough to have a good teacher, and he introduced me to music that was outside of just like cowboy chords or whatever.
Where were you in high school? Where were you living in high school?
Well, in high school I lived in Hudson, Wisconsin. But this was actually seventh grade when I lived in Fargo, and I was really lucky just to I had an amazing teacher. I guess I kind of got into soul music through that, but to be honest, it wasn't a huge part of my like upbringing, like I remember my grandpa got me like a Ray Charles album and stuff, but like it wasn't like a huge part of what I grew up listening to,
Did you, after high school, you went straight to Berkeley, or did you stick around somewhere for a while?
I actually went to 1 year of school in Nebraska, a really small school, and
to be a musician, or you weren't sure?
No, I just knew I wanted to go there. My whole family my sister, my brother, my parents, they had all gone there.
To the same school. What's the school called?
It's called York College.
And what do you study at York College?
Bible studies,
Yeah.
I would say, for the most part. I mean, people can study all sorts of things, but
And were you a pretty straight-laced kid?
Oh,
at that
I was
point?
very straight-laced up until I was 25. Very straight-laced. And so I went through my year of school in Nebraska. Then I went to and I went on to Berkeley for I finished up there. I was there a couple years, and I mean, all through that time, and I studied jazz composition.
Right. So you go now from bouncing around pretty small Midwestern towns, living inside the Church of Christ, going to folk music festivals, a year at college in Nebraska, straight-laced kid who gets turned on to a little bit of jazz harmony along the way. Then you go to Berkeley, which is like a kind of a mecca. It's attracting some of the most talented and ambitious, also not always the most talented and not always the most ambitious, but some of the most talented and ambitious kids from all over the world who want to make a living or have a life in music. And here you are sort of like delivered into that scene.
Yeah.
I'm very curious to know what that felt like to you.
I was like a hermit, to be honest. I lived in a dorm, and I'm lucky.
Yeah.
I went out there also with a friend of mine from high school who still plays bass with me from time to time. Also, in Minneapolis, we lived on this floor, and we all became very tight with the people on my floor. But besides that, I was like obsessive. I was like, if I'm going to be in college, I'm going to spend my time. Did
you get any money, or you were paying for it?
I got money, but I mean, definitely still paid for it.
Yeah,
but I was like, as long as I'm here, I'm not going to get any sort of job or anything. I'm just going to practice. And I would, on top of classes, I had this crazy guitar schedule where I practiced 7 hours a day. And to be honest, it was like very hard to fit it in. Like I was like going to bed at 3, waking up at 9. And like, that was really my main focus. You know,
were serious. You were real serious about it.
Yeah. Like I wanted to and I didn't really know what I wanted musically. I thought I wanted to, do jazz and maybe be like a jazz fusion. I wanted to be like Frank Gambale or something like that, all the time, like having this sense of like songs in my head because I'd grown up with them, And so I just remember like my last semester, I was trying to figure out what I was going to do. And I remember writing a song and being like, man, I hadn't written a song in like 3 years. It felt really good. I'd only been focused on like learning weird shapes on the guitar, and then that's what I was focused on. Yeah. And then I played that, and I wrote that, and it felt good. And I remember in my last semester I was with this. We had to have like a directed study where we were with a particular teacher, and I remember showing him my music and him kind of saying like I don't know if jazz is really what you want to be doing.
Who was the teacher?
I can't remember. His name was Phil. He was a big band. He was only he was like, I wanted to be with this guy, Greg Hopkins, but I got put with this dude, Phil. This was good advice,
Phil,
So,
it sounds like Phil did something good here.
Phil, I'm so happy for your advice, man. But, and then I was like, because I was just a bit all over the place with everything. And then so, finished up college and immediately got married, moved to New York 3 days later.
You met your wife at college?
No, I met my wife in high school.
In high school?
Yeah, and she went to Belmont, and we remained, in a relationship for most of the time, And
what did she go to Belmont for?
Music business.
She did. Music business.
Yeah.
How lucky are you, man?
Yeah. It's funny because her dream was to work at Blue Note, like in high school. And then she got this offer for like an internship, right? We moved here. But then by that time, after going through all of college and kind of realizing the music business wasn't what she thought it was, that's what she wanted to do. And then by the time she got through college, she was like, I'm not so interested in music business. And then she ended up doing, so she does events, but
You moved here together right after college.
Yeah.
And got married.
We got married in Twin Cities, and then, literally 3 days later, moved here. I was actually finishing Berkeley. I had a year left, but I only had 1 day a week, so I would like take the Chinatown bus up to Boston once a week and do that directed study with Phil.
With our famous Phil.
Yeah.
And did you move straight to Harlem? You've been in Harlem the whole time?
Found a place on 116th and 8th, and just knew nothing. We didn't know anything about New York. I don't even know. I had been to Times Square, and I thought it was great. Like as lame as that sounds. And I was like, let's move to we want to move to New York, and we found this place that was like pretty cheap in Harlem. And then, that I would say like 13 years ago, that was really before like the major gentrification started. So it was still cheap, but then like literally a year later, some about the building made it like raise the rent way up. Ended up finding a new place that we've been in for 12 years.
Wow.
Yeah, so I mean, seen Harlem, change quite a bit,
So if you were pretty straight-laced until you were 25,
Yeah.
did you go through some kind of a transformation at some point? Are you still pretty straight-laced?
I'm sober from booze, at least, and I have been for 5 years, but like...
Well, that's what I'm thinking. I mean, like, you describe yourself as being very straight-laced, but there's a whole narrative in your music that if it's telling the truth, you went through some serious shit, man.
Yeah, I did. It's what happens is I find is like, when you grow up with all sorts of rules and you don't have a reason for those rules, eventually, if you're curious, like myself, you're gonna break the rules, because I didn't see any reason other than there was nothing holding me back other than the rule itself. And so honestly, it's as simple as like, I remember I was touring by myself solo, basically, go from 21 to 25. I got in New York, didn't know what I was going to do, but I was just like, oh, I've seen all these folk singers. I'm going to just follow their path, and just start playing acoustic guitar solo. And I was touring all over the place. Ended up with all these gigs in Nebraska, where I went to college. And I remember, like, I was so anti everything bad, like beer or anything,
Never had a drink in college.
Never had a drink in my life, except for like my treehouse when I was 13. I didn't like it, so I was like, I'm not gonna do that again.
So you're a married man out of college, on the road musician, never had a drink.
Yeah. No, I'm very straight laced, and I'm stubborn. It's like. I just remember I was playing this show in Nebraska, and I pulled up, and it was like nothing but pickup trucks, and I was just kind of like nervous. I was just like, how am I going to fit in here? Because I was just like...
And what's your music like?
Yeah, I mean, I was playing kind of folky music, but it was soulful, and it wasn't country, at all. And I felt like most likely like these are... And I just like didn't grow up with like big trucks and stuff. I was like, I feel out of place here. And someone offered me a beer, and I drank it, and I... This sounds so kind of like elementary in a way, and I remember like I drank it, and then I drank another, and then I got on stage, and I've always been loose on stage. I've always been, from the very beginning, I feel more comfortable than anywhere else on stage, but this was like an extra lift, and I was like, I remember I had a lot of fingerstyle guitar shit, and I was like, wow, this is like kind of hard, but I'm just loving this, and so that became my rule. It was like before every show, I'm going to drink 2 beers, and then. Just went up from there. Then I found liquor, and then I found all sorts of other things, and then next thing I know, I'm like, it's 4 years later, and I'm like buying crack from Bebop on Skid Row.
Oh my God.
So it's like it moves fast. It can move. Well, I mean, 4 years it goes. That's the low point. Then you wonder, what the hell am I doing? I'm about to, you look around Skid Row, and you're like, this isn't really what I want to be, and and then, I guess that, people oftentimes hit a low point, hopefully only one, and that there was mine. So from there, I kind of started on a journey. At basically the age of at like 30, I started a journey to like sobriety, and well, the funny thing is like I was sober from alcohol for like 6 months because I had found a way to do that, but then I was still just doing all sorts of other shit, so really just replacing it with something else.
What, like pills and stuff, or
more just coke, blow and stuff, But then and that's what I was on the hunt for, and I was just going down that rabbit hole. It's like when I just got so interested in it, and I kind of realized like this is, my bank account was empty. Me and my wife were separated. Like I hadn't really put out any music in the last 3 years. Like you can look back at that time and be like, oh shit, I haven't done anything for 3 years. I've been waking up. I had a rule basically. I wake up, I work out, and then after that I would start drinking, and then I would try to like sober up a little bit by like 5 p.m. by the time my wife got back, so then I could hide it. You're hiding these things, and And
well, that's what I'm thinking. I mean, she met you as one kind of person.
Yeah.
And this transformation happened after you were married, right? So you had to find a way to bring these habits back home into your life and either confess them to her or hide them from her.
Yeah, and I was secretive about everything to
Did she know that you were drinking at all?
No, yeah. I mean, she drinks and stuff like, she's not like as stubborn as I was, But she had no clue the measure, and really no one did, and that's why I've always been amazed at like, I mean, I'd do almost all my shows blackout drunk. I wouldn't even remember them, and no one ever said anything to me. It's interesting. So in my mind, I thought I must be doing okay, and maybe I was. I don't know. I always felt like I still performed well, to be honest. But I mean, I've only had one show where I just was completely gone, and like there was, and I know it, But like other than that, no one ever said, "Dude, you were terrible last night." No, and it's I was just. That's the danger when you feel like, and I think that's what comes from, a conservative upbringing is like and it's still in me to a certain point. You feel like you don't want to show a certain side of you, because I guess it just has to do with the upbringing and also, but then there's also the fact that like, the people around you won't approve of it. And so it's like, if they don't approve, then I'm going to have to stop, so.
But what I think is interesting about that is that on the one hand, you didn't want to show a certain side of yourself. And on the other hand, whether or not it was a concerted effort when you sobered up and started making music again and started being as prolific as you have been for the last few years, there's an aspect of, I wouldn't have called it this until meeting you today, of ministry in what you sing about now. You totally reveal these things. You know, as I was listening to your last couple records, I was thinking there are two possibilities here. One is that this is totally real, what you're singing about, all of the low points that you hit, all of the shit that you did, sitting on the living room floor spinning, call in the dealer, he's going to hook you up, the relationship with mental illness, or you are one of those songwriters who is deeply able to, reach into the human experience and sing about things that are not real. Yeah. That didn't happen to you, Either way, it's exceptional to me. But what I think is really interesting is that you found a way to, and maybe you needed to talk about it a lot, like to really share it.
Yeah. That is interesting you say that, that you made that ministry thing, because I think about that a lot. I feel like it's very hard for me to write a song without some sort of moral compass, and without some sort of like, it has to have some ending with some lesson. It's got to be like some fable. And honestly, sometimes that annoys me about myself. I'm like, why can't I just write something abstract? Like why can't I just like not care at all about the lyric or whatever? But yeah, I mean, to go back though, like I worship Randy Newman, and he's a character writer. He's
an example of exactly what I'm saying. Somebody who can write about something that didn't happen to him.
Yeah.
From the point of view of somebody he might not even like or respect.
Yeah, absolutely. And in my first two albums that are no longer available, like I took them offline.
Why'd you take them offline?
I felt like I didn't find my voice till later, and so I just that's why, and but that was more character writing, and then after I went through some what I look at as some hard real life experience, then I finally just felt like this is what I'm going to write about, like for a lot of reasons. I mean, I wish I was given that message when I was a kid at certain aspects. And I hear from people that say like, thank you for writing about this. And that means a lot to me, but also I think I just, part of me just got on a truth kick, it's like when you've been like living a life for a certain amount of time, you get, and then you finally tell the truth. That was like my new drug, you know, and maybe it still is, it's like, I want to be honest with things. Sometimes maybe too much. Sometimes I overshare. I don't know, Yeah. But regardless, that's where the honesty comes from in my music,
Were you diagnosed with Tourette's as a young kid?
Yeah.
And they did give you pills?
Yeah. They did give me pills, of course. They did not give me
Adderall, is that what you said they gave you? No, whatever.
I
you
want to
said.
say Demerol.
Yeah.
I'm forgetting my own lyrics right now. But no, I wrote that song a while ago, and then I re-released that actually after Prince passed, and I wrote it. Strangely enough, I wrote it after Michael Jackson died, and it was all about pill culture, and we all got problems, and then when Prince died, I was on essentially like the same shit. I was like, I'm going to remake this and re-put it out. There's a line in there where I say, where I went to the doctor and they gave me Tourette's, OCD, depression, which they did. They said all that stuff, and the only part that's not true is I think they prescribed me with like Prozac. They didn't give me Adderall or whatever,
right.
Or not Adderall, but they didn't give me whatever I say in the song.
Right. Well, there's a couple things about that song that struck me. One is that, when you say we all got problems, I couldn't help but think that you must have been, I have to be careful the way I say it, you tell a story of Elvis and you tell a story of Prince. And I think that there's a part of yourself that understands that you have a kind of artistic mentality too. And like when you're looking at examples in the world of people who've gone down a similar path, you look to, artists as the ones who you maybe you could learn something from, So we all got problems, Elvis, Michael Jackson, and me.
Yeah.
And Prince. It's like I realize that you sort of are looking at the artists who have come before you and seen, well, what have they gone through? And it made me wonder, like, maybe the same people. This is like what Peter Himmelman said to me the other day. The people who have a need to express, to overshare, to perform, they are a little bit different. They're cut from a slightly different cloth.
That song in particular was inspired by, originally Michael Jackson, and then I looked back on my own life and how honestly I felt like I had been diagnosed with something that I didn't really see as a problem, and I think that a lot of people are. It was kind of my way of saying, like, I think we're an overdiagnosed culture. I mean, I was just having a talk with a friend last night, like, she was feeling great from all her Wellbutrin, and then she upped the dosage, and then like 6 months later, now her psychiatrist said she's at the highest dosage she can take. She's like, so we can now, we could add in a little Prozac or a little blah, blah, blah. I'm like, well, when does it ever stop? What's the difference? I mean, you really have to figure that out. It's something different, and so I think that was kind of maybe somewhat of a protest song for that. But yeah, I mean, I to what you were saying, I mean, I think I do wonder about that, if it's just like, just people are just oversharers, like these people that are artists and people that I look up to and stuff.
Right, but also that they're in touch with a deeper sense of pain in the world. I mean, what I think is so kind of striking about your last couple of musical statements, your last couple of albums, is that they're musically almost more sweet. They're wrapped up in this real shiny wrapper, but then the message inside of them is like, if you weren't listening to lyrics, you would have no idea. If you were just digging on the melodies and the groove and the production and stuff, you just say, like, this is some funky good time music, or soulful or whatever. Yeah. But then it's like, I don't think I have heard lyrics like yours in that musical context before.
I think, there's examples of songs out there that it's like, whoa, I didn't realize, like, well, even like, Sitting on the Dock of the Bay is a good one. Like, people just sing that at weddings, whatever. They think, I mean, it's about, a dude that feels like he's wasting his life, wasting away, like, he's going to sit on the dock of the bay, that's it. And I look at that as like that's a sad song that sounds happy, I suppose, and there is something to that. It comes to for me that, like, I don't want to just write downer music all the time, because there's this element that I love performing, and like, I've never been able to, if you're going to write like acoustic slow songs or whatever that go along with your lyrics, it's going to be a whole different kind of performance that I'm probably not going to enjoy that much. Like, maybe someone else will, of course. Yeah. Like, there's definitely an emo crowd out there still somewhere, but like, I guess I enjoy like stage antics and doing weird shit and all, and that doesn't necessarily, go along with the music that maybe would fit the lyrics that I write.
Right. No, exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's funny you say you don't want to write down our songs. There's a lot of songs that on paper are complex emotionally. Yeah. I mess everything up. I ruin everything. What's the line?
I ruin everything.
I ruin everything,
Yeah.
Even, we could use you around here. It's an interesting,
yeah.
I mean, I appreciate that song a lot because that is an uplifting thing,
yeah.
But also, you're thinking about jumping out the window. You're thinking about blowing your brains out. Like this is heavy shit that you're singing about.
Yeah.
It's dressed up in a musical context that people can probably enjoy a great live show, but it does demand a certain emotional investment that a lot of pop music doesn't demand.
Yeah. I'm glad you think that. It's hard. I mean, I write what comes out of me. Like I don't do many co-writes because I'm just not that good at it. I feel like I have to have an emotion in order to really, nowadays at least, put something out that I feel proud about. And usually those emotions come when I'm sitting in a hard mental place, and that's what's written, I mean, I hear advice all the time, like you got to write a happy song, and I hear that, and I'm like, great. I mean, but then I also hear another musical hero of mine, Shelby Lynn. I saw her live, and she's like, said how she's gotten the same advice, and she's like, there's no good happy songs out there, And so I was like, thank you for saying that.
I used to think that too, it's the hardest thing. Like when I was in high school, probably two of the biggest influences for me were James Taylor and Ani DeFranco. And Ani DeFranco was great at articulating her disappointment in people and things around her. She was so articulate and she was so poetic and she was so ruthless about the shit, but it was very hard to come up with an Ani DeFranco song that said really good, positive things about how she felt. But then I found James Taylor, Whenever I See Your Smiling Face, and I thought, that is a hard song to write, man.
Yeah, that song's amazing.
It's an amazing song, and it's a really hard one. If you try to write Whenever I See Your Smiling Face, you will fail 1,000 times before you find it, because he's just saying how much he is happy to see her.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. It is it's a challenge to write a super happy song that's not cheesy.
Yep.
I mean, that could be argued. I love that song, but there are people that are going to say that song's cheesy. As hell. But like, I mean, to come up with something that's positive, uplifting, and doesn't sound like Andy Grammer, like it's not easy, you know. But then also some people, I mean, at the end of the day, you have to. I write the music for myself. You know, you can sit here and talk about an audience and who you're trying to write for, but like, you know, that's a different thing. That's if you're setting out to make $1 million, which would be nice, but that's not what I'm set out here for.
What are you set out here for?
I'm set out here to make to perform and sing my truth for people, and hopefully find an audience that I can feel comfortable going out and playing 20 shows and selling out Bowery Ballroom in those 20 markets. That's been my goal. That's a 500 cap room. Like, you know, you tell that to people, they're like, you bring up Bowery Ballroom to people and they'll be like, oh yeah, I went to this small venue. Yeah, I was down in the Village. Like, cause all they think of as a real venue is like Madison Square Garden. The truth is, as you know, as any musician who listens to this, it's incredibly hard. You know, it's very difficult to find that audience but that's really been my goal. It's never been about money or anything. It's been about playing live performances. That's it. Yeah.
There was a moment early in your career when you did seem to at least take a shot at what would have been the sort of mainstream thing. You went on American Idol.
I almost had to I was like,
don't say it.
I had to interrupt you here. Yeah. I mean, shit, why not? Sometimes I refuse to talk about this, but I'll talk. But you know what? That was my wife seeing a billboard in New Jersey, said American Idol auditions.
And you had just moved? Were you here? You were here already?
We were here, yeah. We've been here for like 3 or 4 years. And she was like, and that was so on a whim. In fact, I went to the stadium in New Jersey, and we were taking videos of myself fake, like throwing up. We were making a total joke of it. Also, I got the last ticket before I could the last like wristband. I was like the last person they let in the stadium, and then as like a total dick, I like just cut ahead and went first. So my whole audition, I was like, I'm gonna make this take up as little time as possible. It took up an hour, and I think what happened is because I cared so little, that's what came across. You know, they wanted a story, of course, like everyone wants a story on, and so like they were like, I told them, I'm a musician. They're like, wow, think of something else because that's not interesting. So I told them I made microwaves for a living, and that brought me into like, you know, I think that brought me to. I told them I made microwaves and I was a mechanic. The next day, I get a call from some producer being like, "Hey, we want to go to your shop. We want to film you, you know, working on a car. I don't know shit about cars." And so I'm like, I like majorly was scrambling, like trying to figure something out. Anyways, I mean, I think that they never blatantly told me like they knew I was lying, but I think they had to. You know, the film crew came to my place. We were like trying to figure things out. You know, the whole experience to me was done as a joke, and then it turned out. And honestly, I do have my regrets with that experience.
I think that you, for what it's worth, that is buried deep. I mean, somebody's got to go looking for you to
Not
find
anymore.
that.
Not a joke.
Oh no! Well, don't kid yourself about how many people are listening to this, but I think that I'm not saying anybody should go looking for it. I found it, and I had forgotten if I knew that. I mean, you know, my wife loves that show, and my daughter watches that show, or did watch it. I don't even know if it's on or if it's back or whatever. But I always had my issues with it because generally my sense is life as a musician is a competition all day long. Wake up and just live a life and pay your rent. Like, that's enough. Yeah. You know, to then somehow turn it into like a gladiator fight is so brutal to me. I just never really understood it. Although, all things considered, some great artists have actually emerged out of that stuff. So whatever. Talent sometimes has a way of fighting its way to the top one way or the other. But when I saw that, I thought it was clear to me it was a moment in your life. It didn't have anything to do with the music that I saw that made me want to write to you or anything that, you know, that you're putting out now. It's obviously old enough now too. That it's like, whatever, it happened.
It's interesting. I mean, it's definitely not long game, you know. It's because those fans are extremely fleeting. You know, it's like, what's the next season? I mean, definitely got some interesting life experiences from it. Super interesting life experiences. Met some people that I'm still friends with, and because of that, that's the only thing that I really hold on to from it. I, in a lot of ways, have tried to bury it. You know, like different YouTube things. Like I've reached out to people and been like, "Can you please take that down?" You know, and
can you talk about did you have to sign a crazy contract? Can you talk about it?
Yeah, I think so, but I just honestly I wasn't paying much attention. I wasn't taking it seriously at all, you know? And I mean, then of course, when you get into it, then of course, and you know, in the end, no matter what, it always hurts in the end to get cut and all that stuff. And I got super excited because I was like, oh my God, I was like touring my solo thing, playing like colleges and coffee houses. And I had this life plan that was like gonna happen unless this happened, you know? So at one point I was like, you know, I was just like, well, which way is my life gonna go, you know? And I mean, funny story about it, I was playing a college. I still was playing shows after I got cut, but like nobody knew because obviously there's a lag between the editing.
So
and stuff.
From American Idol,
and so like I remember when I was playing this college and I got cut like while I was playing the show, like because I know what it was. They were showing the program. They were showing American Idol as I was playing, which is already like super annoying, but whatever. They were advertising me as this dude from American Idol, so of course they're gonna play it. And while I'm playing my set,
you get cut.
They see me get cut, and the disappointment, man. I felt like I had been a fraud to them, even though they had booked me before, you know, the American Idol thing, everything ever happened. But
deception, such deception.
I know, man. It was bad. But
were you drinking at that point?
Yeah. I had started. Like that was pretty new for me at that time. I think that all happened when I was like 25, and honestly, like it's really hard to say. Reality TV, that whole situation, maybe just fame in general, it fucks people up, you know. And I think that there's something to that. And I would never. I mean, I take responsibility for all the shit I did, you know. But I do wonder if like that attributed to some of it. You know, it's like you you see this literally golden ticket, and then it's like, and then it's taken from you, and then it's like, oh shit. Stuff did get really bad for me. Just went spiraled quick, you know, after that, and I don't fully blame that, but I would say that probably played a part.
Yeah.
You know?
So from what I see, you put out a record in 2014. Is that when you start? That's when you got sober?
No.
No.
I was drunk on that whole.
You were drunk on that whole record.
Yeah.
And that's like a big production. That's like a version of an artistic statement for you. Strings and horns and like a full and a little more retro throwback thing too. Kind of looking at Motown stacks kind of thing.
Yeah.
Post Amy Winehouse kind of production approach.
Yeah. You got me boxed there. Yeah. No, it's I definitely was hugely influenced, and I was really influenced probably most so by like that CeeLo Green album that came up around that time, and just like a lot of different stuff, and like I said earlier, I was composition major in college, and I mean, I can't say that in those 4 or 5 years of self-destruction I didn't do anything. Like I obviously found a way to write all these string arrangements. I mean, that was a really intense album. I had some of my favorite sessions ever because like the most just extreme, because it was like I had like a real 12-piece string section. I remember it was costing me $1,000 an hour Did you pay for the record? I had a Kickstarter, which I helped with $10,000, but I did pay for it. But like I've always used DIY to the max, so I wrote all the stringers, did everything, and then I hit like that session, for instance, I did in 3 hours, which was tracking strings for 8 songs with like union players and everything, and with all the horns, it was the same thing. Like I just didn't have the money to do it any other way. I was like, and so that's really how I came up. And like, in a lot of ways, I'm like most proud of that album because I put the most like. It's like the biggest basket of skills where I came into that.
It showed. It's true. It does give a sense of the musicality, and you put it out as 2 though, right? You put it out as like a side 1, side 2. Put it
out as side 1, side 2, kind of with that old school feel, and also just to extend the stuff and
that's been part of your approach. This is one thing that I see that just in terms of the sort of strategy of the way you're trying to put work out is like to constantly have a thing, like singles come out first, then a record. You put out an EP, then another, or side 1, side 2. This is an idea that just to be constantly putting stuff in front of people.
Yeah, because I think people's attention span are, I don't know if people have always been saying this, but it really does feel like it's just like nothing, so it's like literally like I don't even care when I put something out anymore, like because I'm just like, I care for myself. I'm like, this is cool, but like I'm like, this is gonna last 3 days. The thing is, I put out an acoustic version of my album Love, Drugs, and Decisions, and I put it all out as one, and I remember thinking like, oh man, like I want this song to shine, I want the opportunity, give this some more time, as well. And so then, I've just very much been like, do things, like try to put out something, like basically like I'll make the whole album and then I'll release everything, maybe except for 2, or with the last album, everything except for 2 songs, and then release it all together. Yeah. And that's what I intend to do with the next one as well. Because it is kind of tough, because once you put out the album, it just kind of feels done in a certain way, what you do after that is then hopefully play some shows, you playing the music, tour it,
I found you through Corey Wong. I found you on the track that you sang on for Corey, Limited World. Yeah. I didn't know. And then, when I started looking into it, it was like, oh man, we've got all these friends in common and we get all this overlap. And I'm surprised at myself for not having found it sooner. But am I the only one? Did you find that you found some new fans?
Like anytime like Corey or Theo can, they have such a big platform. Anytime they can throw my name or whatever, like it's always it's a huge help for me, and so I'm not surprised that you came through it from that. People will come to shows and be like, I heard about you through Theo or Corey, whatever.
Is this where you were sitting up and standing down? Is standing up and sitting down?
No, actually, that's one reason why I made this. For those obviously people can't see, we're sitting in my painted green screen box, and I actually did that on the roof of this place, and realized it was just such a pain with wind that then when I got this bigger space, I was like, I'm just gonna. It's green screen stuff is really tough. And actually, Corey, he hit me up to do that. So like he had come up with the track and he had put the track out. I had already seen the track and I don't know, a while prior. I mean, because that song was a long time. And if I go back to like the email chain, it was like a year in the making or whatever. And and he like gave me a couple tracks to choose from to write something over. So then I was like, I heard the kind of Minneapolis vibe in the music. I was like, so I'm gonna do my little falsetto thing over it. Try to fit the theme a little bit. And yeah, super stoked with how it came out and in the end, and was psyched to do it. And then he was like, yeah, can you do these green screen videos? So I just went up on my roof and it's New York, man. You got to figure out how to use space.
No, I know you are very. What's that word when you
make use of things?
Yes,
I know what
you know what I'm talking about. You know the word. Two of us trying to find one word. That was a very Minneapolitan song in many ways, and in it you tell a story about going down to First Avenue and getting schooled. Is this a true story?
Amazing. So actually, that was that was one of Corey's changes. Obviously we went back and forth. Like he sent me the track, I did lyrics and melody, then we went back and forth through email, just like different ideas. And I took a trip to Harlem, something, and it was a line about this place called Paris Blues, which is 2 blocks away from where I live. It's one of like the remaining jazz clubs in Harlem. And that was his idea. He was like, could we switch this to Minneapolis and Bunkers? And I don't sometimes when I'm trying to do this off the top of my head, I have such a hard time with lyrics, but
they played a little harder than I was used to.
Yeah. And I say to a bar in the Northern Loop, I didn't want to just be as literal as Bunkers, but yeah. And so, so that was Corey's idea to, put the Minneapolis flavor with that lyric, for sure.
Got it. Yeah. Well, that definitely changes the attitude. So it is something that happened to you, but it did not happen to you in Minneapolis.
Yeah.
Did you spend any time, log any hours in Minneapolis?
Honestly, not really. Like I have post-college and honestly, that's how I know Corey. That's how I know a lot of people from Minneapolis is through my friend Ryan Butler, who plays bass sometimes with Corey, but we went to high school together, went to college together, and then he went back to Minneapolis when I came to New York. And every time I go back to Minneapolis, I just meet his friends. And I remember that's really just where
that's how you met Corey?
Seeing people playing like weddings and stuff, being like, wow, that dude's a killing guitar player, and then he was out in New York and I was like, hey, want to play with me on this gig, whatever, And so that's all been a long-term relationship, which is great. I mean, I think that's really where all the best things come from. When it's not, there was nothing schmoozy about it. It was just a genuine connection.
And is that how did you meet Theo through Corey?
No, I actually met Theo separately through my friend and also ex band member of high school named Reed Grimm, and he played with this band that I don't know if they've talked about that was on this jam circuit, and they played co-bills with this band My Dear Disco or Ella Riot. And so he was like, man, you got to meet this dude Theo. You guys are like musical brothers, whatever. And so we're literally we're this keeps on coming back to Nebraska, just strange. But me and Reed are touring through Nebraska, and he calls Theo on the phone and he's talking to him, whatever. And this is must have been 8 years ago or something. And he's like, and somehow he ends up putting us on the phone, and we realize that we're both playing shows. Theo was about to move to New York, and we're both playing shows at Rockwood Music Hall on the same night, literally right next to each other. So I'm like, hey, without ever hearing him play drums, I was like, hey man, you want to save each other some dough, and I'll play guitar for you if you play drums for me. And that's how the relationship started. And then we toured. Theo played drums with me for I don't know, a couple years, and then and I'd play guitar with him, and then he moved out to LA, and obviously shit started going crazy. And now a couple days MSG.
Yeah. You gonna go?
I am going, yeah.
Even though I live in New York, I still experience a lot of my music through the internet. I still find stuff online. And when I see a video of you and Theo together, it's like, oh, those are my two friends from the internet. And they're hanging out together on the internet, Yeah. And I talked to Corey about it too. The internet is a community, and it is a place where people find each other,
Oh, absolutely.
And so that's why it's always curious to me, to know, did people meet on the internet, or did they actually meet in physical space first before they, I appreciate knowing that you met him at a gig and not just through the sort of like online.
Oh, yeah. It was before. I probably wouldn't be the best at like meeting people online. I always wonder, I never did, online dating or anything. Yeah. So I always wonder for people, I'm so curious, like, what's it like when you're like talking to this person online and then it's like you meet up? That must be so awkward. And most people are like, no, it's not awkward, because it's like, it's what they know. They're used to it or whatever.
Well, to an extent, that's what anybody who sees a video of you first and then sees you live is having their own version of that, right? I mean, when you go to a concert of somebody that you've been following their videos, especially an oversharer such as yourself, right? I mean, the thing is, you walked me through this storage space when we walked in here. I've seen the halls of this storage space.
Yeah.
You made a video a couple months ago in which you walked your entire, anybody who wants to see, into a storage room, you know, onto the roof, into your apartment, saw the dog, saw the whole thing, So, I mean, it's still different to experience something live, but I mean, you've shared a lot of you've given so much of that of yourself already.
That makes it feel like, when I do a show, like that helps me realize like it's probably super exciting for some people, like of course it is, but it's just because they've seen me in different elements, and now it's like, whoa, you're real. Like that's really cool.
Yeah, you're real, and you've given a lot. I mean, this is the aspect of it that I think is just like, I realize that when you're writing a song in a storage space in Harlem, you have no sense of whether or not it's like saying a lot or a little necessarily about yourself.
Yeah.
But you're very confessional, I feel like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which leads me to this question. So you had a record essentially about substance abuse and getting sober. Mm. You had another one about kind of sadness and depression.
Mm. Which that's still much like a very real battle for me. Like that's my first thought every morning. I mean, and to me it seems like it should be the case with everybody. Like to me, like everybody wakes up and thinks, I don't want to be here today. Like that's your first thought, but then you find out like, well, no, actually that's not the case. But like, I mean, and I've gone through it. It's just like, that's what mental illness, or that's what depression is. And it's just something, it's so complicated because people, you see things like, I'll see things like the myth of mental illness or whatever, and it always makes me question myself, because I mean, I've also gone on spiritual journeys where I've come to a conclusion that I've been like, oh, my mind is all powerful. Like I can control this. And I have come to that conclusion, but then you lose it, then it's been my battle for a long time. And sometimes I try to think like, maybe it's my battle because I keep on thinking about it or keep on singing about it. But the fact of the matter is like, I wake up and those are the thoughts that I don't choose to put in my head. I mean, one of my song off my latest record called Machine Gun, that's how it feels. It's someone just unloading. It's unloading. It's just boom, 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 boom. Negative thought, negative thought, negative thought, negative thought. And it's like, it's hard to fight that, it's real. So.
Well, you said earlier that on the one hand, you wrote a song that kind of speaks to overdiagnosis, that there's a tendency to overdiagnose and overprescribe. And on the other hand, I mean, are there pharmacological tools to help this, or in your experience, and especially when you deal with substance abuse, it's like you have to be super careful about that.
Yeah.
How do you manage that?
It is hard, and I think that I work a lot. Like as far as, I mean, if you want to, if you're referring to music as work, because I love doing it, but it's like I put out a lot of things, and I sort of have chosen to make that my distraction to a certain degree, because when I get into the zone of producing a song or making a video, whatever, like everything's gone. Like I'm in that, I don't care. I don't care if whatever, no one sees it or anything. It's just fun, and that's just like, and essentially like my happy place. So because of in the past going down different paths that have led to places I don't want to go again, I don't go there again. And I use music as a way, to get through it.
Yes. Yeah. That, to an extent, explains why there's so much, I mean, I'm hung up on the lyrics. I know I'm getting hung up on the lyrics and all the.
I'm so glad you listen to lyrics. You know, not everyone does, so I appreciate it.
You know, I'm going to be honest with you. I reached out to you before I had. I was drawn to you musically. I just was like, whoa, this is some seriously great shit. I want to talk to this guy.
Yeah.
And the persona and the sort of like the physicality of who you were, and this sort of like there was a kind of a humor and levity about you that I was drawn to before I knew what you were singing about. You know, I just was like, this is I need to know about this guy. And then you're in a storage space in Harlem. There's so many things about it that were like calling to me, in the Midwestern thing.
Yeah.
And then I sort of thought to myself, boy, my intuition was so right to reach out to you because there's so much depth in this writing too. So I'm an example of somebody who heard the music first and immediately responded to it, and then figured out that there was something else. And I thought, boy, I was like rewarded for going deeper into it. But that's what's so interesting, is that there's so much lightness about your sort of like, I mean, down to the, you know, the what you're wearing, and you know, your whole kind of physical presentation about how you put stuff out. And then at the same time, you know, videos in abandoned gymnasiums and, you know, just all kinds of high concept shit. And then at the same time, there's all this heaviness in the lyrics, but there is a lot of lightness in you as well. So it's like a dual, it's a left and a right, you know?
Yeah. I think if I made a video or posted every single thought that I had, it would not be a place people wanted to go. I don't think, you know, I have to, filter a lot, you know, so it's like I put it into I maybe like that's what it is I put it into the songs, and then it's like the songs are so interesting. It's like the confessions, like you said, like that you make on stage in front of all these people. It's bizarre because it doesn't, when it's in the form of a song, like that's where I, you know, feel most comfortable doing it. And it wouldn't be, I think it'd be a hard thing to watch. I mean, maybe. I think if I just straight up was on like all social platforms, was just honest with the way I was always feeling, you know?
Sure.
And
have you used your music to confess to your loved ones or to your friends or people close to you?
Yeah, I've used music definitely in the past where I get nervous to put out, and I realize if I play this for this is also, it's like I'm an emotional person, if I start really, if I bring up something to like anyone in my family, like I can't get through it. But if I write it in a song and then practice that song, then I can
sing it to them.
Then I can sing it, you know, or I can put it out so they can hear it, and then like that's my line to them, you know, like here's how I'm doing, you know.
What have they thought of your journey? I mean, it seems like you, in many ways, like moved to Mars and live in like an alien.
Yeah. I'm definitely. I love my parents. I love my family very much, and I know that I've gone way out of their comfort zone, you know, in a lot of ways, and every now and then, like, you know, like if there's a song with like a lot of swearing, like I put out a cover of Break Stuff by Limp Bizkit, and a lot of swearing in it. So I'll send a text to my mom. You know, you might not want to watch this, you know, and you know, or whatever. But like, it's just, but I do feel like, you know, my lyrics and stuff do help. I mean, and I've had conversations with them after I sing the song or something, you know, like, or after they hear it, you know, they'll be like, I heard what you were saying in that, you know, and it's the way I found that I can do it without like losing it. You know?
Yes. Where do you see your career right now? I mean, I totally agree with you, by the way. A 500 cap for the rest of your life in 20 markets is a great success.
Yeah.
And it's a real target. You know what I mean? Everything else is fantasy and fiction to me.
Yeah.
250 cap in 40 markets is good too. You know
what I mean?
Yeah. Like being able to play to a, you know, moderate to large room, meaning, you know, I agree with you. People think Bowery's small. Just try to make a living as a musician, and then let's talk about what Bowery really is. You know?
Yeah, totally.
I know you just came back from a handful of dates on the West Coast. How do you feel like your career is working out? I mean, are you moving in a direction that you want to be moving?
I think I need some help. I need what I want, you know, and a lot of it comes from, I feel like it comes from genuine connections and stuff. But it's like, a lot of artists want this, but you know, that right support slot. I mean, the fact that I've been doing this over a decade and have never gotten like, it's always been like either a co-bill or a headline tour, which is like, I mean, it's a really difficult approach, you know, because it's like, I mean, the few times in certain circumstances when I've gotten the chance to open for people, like I got to open for Alan Stone once, and like that was big. Like people came back to shows. Were like, I saw you open for Alan Stone, loved it, coming back. You know, so it's like if I could do that all over the place for like a year or two, I feel like that'd be really beneficial. That being said, like I did these shows on the West Coast because I essentially, besides getting to do this like Russia tour that I did in July, besides that, I hadn't played or toured since last October. And I had essentially came to a place where I was like, I'm done with this approach. I'm done touring, even though until the opportunity comes along that is really truly going to be beneficial. And then I guess
you go out and you play to half empty rooms, or you lose money, and you come home and you say, what am I doing with my life?
Absolutely. That's it. And it can be a low point, man. You know, I mean, you know, and so that's, I just felt like it was, the pressure was so huge. You know what, like people don't think about it, but like, you know, when you have your name on a bill and it's just you know, just like Caleb Hawley or whatever. And then it's like, you think about your band, like, are they going to enjoy themselves? Like as you're on the road and like, you know, they don't want to feel like they're with this dude and then you only play for like, you know, a half empty room or whatever, you know, and then you think about the audience who also wants to, you know, you feel more energy when there's more people there. Like they question themselves, am I in the right place? Why?
From what I understand, you go for it. So you're going to go for it whether there's 10
Yeah,
people
I mean,
in the
I'm
room or
still,
not.
I think I pretty much do that. I mean, there's times when I haven't, when I can't, but like, yeah, I mean, I pretty much act like I'm playing MSG when I'm playing whatever. It doesn't matter. But then, you know, there's a lot. Then there's the obviously financial side. There's being away from home. There's just so much pressure that came into the show that I was just like, wow, I don't know that I can do this until the right opportunity comes. And so then I put out an album and I was like, man, I just hadn't played in so long, and I just got the itch. And there was definitely a lot of, I mean, I was terrified for the last little run I did. And thankfully, you know, 3 of the 4 shows were really good and felt, and I was very happy with. And, you know, and I felt like, oh, if I kept on doing this, you know, if I come back to these markets, if I don't wait 2 years, but I'm also sort of skeptical. I'm like, well, it's just, you know, after doing it for a certain amount of time and not knowing how the pattern goes, you know, it can be so random. It can be like, you know, every single person, like you get to town and then like the people that you know you can count on to show up, every single one of them text you and be like, man, I can't make it, you know, whatever. And then you're like, oh, then I'm just like terrified going into the show.
But it's an interesting thing because you are so DIY, and it's like, you know, there's kind of 2 messages that are being sent to artists. One is you got to be able to do it all yourself, make the videos, make the record, don't be reliant on anybody's money or anybody else's resources. And you got that covered. I mean, you have yourself set up in a space where you can create. You can constantly do the kind of work that you want to do. You can do video stuff. You write. You know, you said you don't like to co-write. You're doing a lot of stuff on your own. And on the other hand, you're only going to get so far without, as you say, without some help, without somebody booking you or somebody who's managing the process in some way. And I'm not saying I have any concept of what the right answer is. I don't. I mean, I think it's a mystery to me, especially with somebody like you, because you're so gifted, you know, and there are a lot of gifted people out there. I mean, I think there's an incredible amount of talent out there right now, and you certainly fit into that category of highly talented, great quality work that's getting out there.
Thanks.
What does a person do, you know?
And I think about this, you know, it just consumes my mind sometimes, you know, and it's like, and you know, and I come to different conclusions, and I will say one thing that I do feel like has been a weak spot for me is being good at asking for help. You know, like that's sometimes, you know, obviously I have some friends that are crushing it, you know, but like you don't want to, sometimes it's like, you know, I don't want to jeopardize that relationship. I don't want to, like, we're friends first. I don't want to make a position where it's like, oh, you know, it's going to be something strange and you know, like a a wedge in the relationship or something like that, you know. And then I have, you know, currently I'm working with a manager who's like, ask everything, man, for everything. Yeah. And I'm like, and so, you know, he's like, you know, like that's good for me. Oftentimes he does it for me, which has been great.
Major. No, I mean, you've got that lyric in I Ruin Everything where you say something like, everything seems to work out for you. It seems like I just ruin everything. And I was thinking to myself, you probably do know people who you go, man, everything seems to be working out for this person.
Yeah.
You know, why is it working out for somebody else and not working out for me?
I definitely do. And, you know, and I've had conversations with these people about this, you know. Yeah. That's why I just keep on coming back to the fact that, like, it just... You can't do it for someone else. Like, I have to be happy with the music I'm making for myself because I don't know that anyone's gonna hear it. I don't know. And at the end of the day, like, I hope someone does. But like, if I'm making music that I'm happy with, then years down the road, I can look back and be like, oh man, I can show it to kids or something and be like, man, look what Grandpa came up with when he was 30. You know, it's like, then that's what I hold on to, you know. But like, obviously, when I whittle this whole thought process down into something simple, I'm like, I have to do it for myself, you know. And
well, hey man, I heard it, and I came up to Harlem to talk to you.
So thank you. Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
Anything else we should you want to talk about?
Other than the fact that I love who you're having on the podcast.
Oh, thanks.
And just been super surprised. I mean, I told you this, but I'll say it again. Like, when I just got this new space, and while I was putting it together, I listened to a bunch of the podcasts and just some of the people like are like blasts from the past for me, but in like the best ways. Like Richard Julian was also a huge musical inspiration to me, and like I didn't even know he was back in New York, and I listened and I was like, now I got to go to this bar that he has.
I'm going tonight, by the way.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, we can talk about it in a minute, but I'm going tonight.
Oh, sick, right on. Yeah, and then it's like you and Corey, and like you, when you listen to podcasts, you know, people will open up in different ways, and so you get to learn usually something new. Even when they're good friends, you get to learn something new about them, and that's been fun for me. So,
is there anybody you think I should talk to?
Have you ever heard of Lewis Taylor?
You know, I saw you mention him in an interview, and actually I was on the train here today going, Lewis, what was it? Lewis what? I got to check him out before I talk to you. He's a British guy, but he's retired. But behind that, maybe Jamie Lydell. He does podcasts too. So I mean, I've gotten to hear him a little bit there, but Lewis Taylor is just a big mystery because he retired from music, but to me put out like the richest, best album, I mean, in the last 3 years. I mean, he put it out in 96, but since I've become aware of it, it's been my favorite. Nothing has replaced it for the last 3 years. And is he in London? Where is he?
Yeah, I believe so. You know, it's. I actually went down a rabbit hole just like a few days ago, and I found an interview that he did in 2016, and it was actually really interesting because they were asking like, did you leave the music business because you were just fed up with the fact that you like weren't getting the success you deserved? And he was like the concept. And he was like, no, the concept of fame and all that comes from something that you're missing deep down inside. Mm-hmm. And so I discovered that and then didn't care, you know? And
that's amazing.
Yeah,
I love that.
I know. That was just a few days ago. So I've been like chewing on that for the last few days, you know?
Yes, I get that. I hear that. Well, I'll look him up, man. I definitely will. Yeah, I saw that. You know, it's funny. I saw this interview that you did on Pop, whatever, I forget what it's called. Anyway, I saw a video where you mentioned Lewis Taylor. Yeah. But the other thing that I thought later on, in retrospect, was so nuts about that interview is that it was sponsored by a wine company, and there's this girl. She's a very well-intentioned, well-meaning woman, you know, and you guys are both have these glasses of wine in front of you and this bottle of wine, and she's cheersing you. And it's like, we're big fans of yours, you know, we're really happy to have you in the studio, and thank you so much for playing us your music and everything. And it's like, this is crazy. This is a crazy thing that's happening right now. And in retrospect, thinking about the look on your face as you're going through this it's like a very intense thing to have to be confronted with just booze while you're promoting a record about not drinking.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting, right? But I come into those situations a lot. You know? I mean, it can be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
not drinking can be uncomfortable because people are either like, oh, or they think you're judging them or something, which I'm not, and or they just wonder, they're like, what's the backstory there, and like whatever. But yeah, that was a interesting thing that happened. I'm just like my wife Samantha was there, and I was like, hey, like be extra happy about this wine, like double it for me, type of thing. So
be psyched about it.
Yeah.
Well, Caleb Hawley, thank you so much, man.
Yeah, thank you.
This was great.
Yeah.
There he was, my friends. Caleb Hawley. What a beautiful conversation. What a sweet guy. I knew that there was a reason to talk to him, but boy, I had no idea what I was getting myself into. I'll be back again soon with another deep dive. As a matter of fact, in the next week, I have some really odd, strange, wonderful surprises coming. So stay tuned, and don't forget to follow those socials at Third Story Pod on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. I'll talk to you soon.